Hey guys, today we begin with a whispering plunge into dawn-lit Rome, where charcoal haze and lead-laced wine are already conspiring against every breath you take. Together we'll drift past creaking insulae, feverish bathhouses, and riot-prone forums, tracing each silent hazard that could end your visit before sunset. And when the midnight bells finally echo over the Tiber, you'll see why surviving just one ancient day demanded the favor of the gods themselves. But before you get comfortable, please make sure to like the video and subscribe if you genuinely appreciate the work I do here. And please let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, put your phone or remote out of reach, and let's move into tonight's journey together. The mist hangs low over the Tiber, a ghostly shroud draped across ancient waters that have witnessed the rise and fall of empires. As our journey begins at the Milvian Bridge, you find yourself transported through time, your modern sensibilities about to collide with the harsh realities of Rome in its imperial glory. The wooden planks beneath your feet creak softly, a gentle rhythm that almost lulls you into a false sense of security. Almost. The first light of dawn barely penetrates the fog, casting everything in a dreamy, ethereal glow. River barges glide by like phantoms, their hulls making soft, watery whispers against the current. How peaceful it seems, this moment suspended between night and day, between your world and theirs. But even in this tranquil scene, danger quietly surrounds you. Take a deep breath. That's your first mistake. The air carries the mingled aromas of charcoal fires being stoked for the morning, fish brine from yesterday's catch, and something else, something earthy and unpleasant, that you'll soon learn permeates every corner of this ancient metropolis. What your nose detects is the complex bouquet of 1 million people living without modern sanitation, their waste flowing through open sewers or simply tossed onto streets. This very air could kill you, though not immediately. Roman air contains invisible threats your body has never encountered, particulates, bacteria, and pathogens that your immune system isn't prepared to fight. Many Romans themselves survive only because their bodies have adapted since childhood to this microbial onslaught. You, however, have no such protection. Even as you stand here, taking in the romantic scene of ancient Rome awakening, microscopic invaders are already finding their way into your lungs, your bloodstream, your gut. The distant call of a rooster pierces the morning calm, soon joined by another, then another, a discordant chorus spreading across the 7 hills. Rome is stirring, and as the city awakens, so too do the dangers that lurk in its every corner. The peaceful river scene will soon give way to a chaotic urban nightmare that has claimed countless lives throughout the centuries. Will you survive the next 24 hours? The odds, dear time traveler, are not in your favor. As dawn fully breaks over the eternal city, the dreamy fog begins to lift, revealing a more insidious haze. Throughout Rome, thousands of cooking fires are being lit simultaneously, in cramped apartments, street-side food stalls, and bathhouse furnaces. Wood smoke mingles with the acrid fumes of burning dung, the latter being a common fuel source for the city's poor. This particulate cloud settles over Rome like a woolen blanket, thickening the air you breathe. Look toward the hills, and you'll notice how the grand villas of the wealthy are positioned above this smoky layer. This is no coincidence. The Roman elite understood that fresh air was found in the countryside or at higher elevations, leaving the masses to choke in the valley's smog. Pliny the Elder himself wrote of people who moved to the hills to escape heavy air and its associated ailments. They didn't understand the science, but they recognized the patterns of respiratory disease that plagued urban dwellers. The soft, persistent cough you hear from that elderly man shuffling past, that's the sound of chronic bronchitis, a common affliction in Rome. Medical texts from this period describe widespread chest ailments and breathing difficulties among city residents. Modern analysis suggests that the average Roman urbanite likely suffered lung capacity comparable to a modern cigarette smoker, even if they never touched tobacco. Children are particularly vulnerable. Notice the wheezing toddler being carried by his mother, his small lungs struggling against the assault of wood smoke, dust, and mold spores. Before antibiotics, A simple respiratory infection could easily progress to pneumonia and death. Nearly 30% of Roman children never reached their 5th birthday, many succumbing to respiratory ailments we would treat routinely today. As you move through the awakening streets, the morning fires intensify, and you feel the first tickle of irritation in your throat. Your eyes begin to water slightly. By midday, this minor discomfort might progress to something more concerning. But for now, let's continue our journey and find some breakfast, though that too comes with its own set of invisible hazards. The narrow street opens onto a slightly wider thoroughfare, where early risers cluster around small shop fronts called popinae, simple food stalls that serve as the fast food joints of ancient Rome. The comforting aroma of porridge bubbling in earthenware pots draws you forward. This is pulse, the staple food of common Romans, a thick gruel made from millet or emmer wheat, sometimes enriched with cheese, honey or eggs for those who can afford such luxuries. A sleepy-eyed vendor ladles a generous portion into a clay bowl and offers you a small cup of watered wine to wash it down. How quaint, you think. This simple breakfast served just as it would have been 2,000 years ago. The warmth of the bowl in your hands provides comfort against the morning chill. The porridge itself is surprisingly flavorful despite its simple ingredients. Nutty, slightly salty, with an earthy undertone that speaks of fields and harvests long past. But as you raise the wine cup to your lips, sunlight catches the gleam of the glaze inside, a faint iridescent shimmer that betrays the presence of lead. This seemingly innocent cup represents one of Rome's most pernicious killers, lead poisoning. The Romans used lead acetate, or sugar of lead, as a sweetener in wines and syrups, appreciating its pleasant taste without understanding its deadly effects. The wealthy, who consumed more sweetened wines and syrups than the poor, often suffered most severely from this invisible toxin. The clay bowl holding your porridge likely contains lead in its glaze as well. Each bite transfers microscopic amounts into your bloodstream, beginning a process of bioaccumulation that, over time, would cause neurological damage, kidney failure, and eventually death. Romans with lead poisoning exhibited symptoms including fatigue, confusion, abdominal pain, and infertility, all of which they attributed to other causes or simply accepted as the normal deterioration of aging. Take another spoonful of the warm gruel, savoring its comforting texture. Its immediate danger is minimal. The real threat is cumulative exposure. But other elements of your breakfast pose more immediate risks. The water mixed into both your porridge and wine comes from Rome's celebrated aqueducts, an engineering marvel that unfortunately doesn't filter out parasites or bacteria. Microscopic eggs of intestinal worms may already be making their way into your digestive tract, preparing to hatch and take up residence in your body. As you finish your simple meal, wiping the last traces of pulse from the earthenware bowl, your stomach feels momentarily satisfied. Yet the invisible invaders, lead particles, parasitic eggs, and waterborne bacteria have already begun their silent work. The Peppina owner nods as you pay with the copper coins you've somehow acquired in this temporal journey. His teeth are noticeably discolored, his gums receded, classic signs of the lead poisoning that will never be diagnosed in his lifetime. It's time to venture deeper into the heart of Rome, which means crossing through the insulae districts, the towering tenement blocks that house the vast majority of Rome's urban poor. As you leave the relative openness of the main thoroughfare, the sky above narrows to a thin strip between looming structures that rise 5, 6, even 7 stories high. These are the shadowlands of Rome, where sunlight barely penetrates and dampness clings to walls perpetually. The insulae cast long shadows, not just literally, but metaphorically. Their very construction is a death trap waiting to claim victims. Look up, and you'll notice the haphazard nature of these buildings. Unlike modern apartment blocks built to code, these structures were thrown up by speculative builders, using the cheapest materials possible. The higher floors, particularly precarious, rent for less due to the increased danger and inconvenience. A woman on a third-floor balcony shakes out a rug, sending dust and debris raining down. Pedestrians below don't even flinch. They're accustomed to this constant shower of household waste. More dangerous are the pottery shards and broken tiles that regularly plummet from upper stories. Emperor Augustus limited the height of these buildings to 70 Roman feet after numerous fatal accidents, but the regulation is often ignored by greedy landlords. Notice the wooden beams supporting that balcony? They're rotting where they join the wall, weakened by years of rain seeping through poorly sealed masonry. Collapses are so common that Romans have developed a fatalistic attitude towards structural failures. Just last month, an entire staircase in the building across the narrow street gave way, sending 12 residents plummeting to their deaths. The owner paid a nominal fine and made minimal repairs. Inside these insulae, entire families occupy single rooms no larger than a modern bathroom. The sounds of domestic life echo through thin walls. Babies crying, couples arguing, someone coughing with a deep, wet rattle that suggests tuberculosis. Most units lack running water, proper ventilation, or cooking facilities, forcing residents to use dangerous braziers for heat and food preparation. At night, the risk of fire transforms these cramped quarters into potential crematoriums. As you edge past a particularly decrepit building, you hear an ominous cracking sound from above. Instinctively, you press yourself against the opposite wall as a chunk of facade crashes down, shattering on the street exactly where you stood moments before. The few pedestrians nearby barely react. Just another day in the insulae Shadowlands. Your heart pounds with the realization of how randomly death strikes here. The narrow passage finally widens, and the imposing buildings give way to a broader vista. Before you sprawls the Forum Romanum, the beating heart of the empire. After the claustrophobic tension of the insulae, this open space should feel like a relief. Instead, it presents new dangers cloaked in civic splendor. The Forum buzzes with activity even at this morning hour. Lawyers confer with clients beside ornate columns, merchants argue over contracts on the basilica steps, priests prepare for ceremonies at temple entrances. Administrative workers hurry past carrying wax tablets and scrolls, the bureaucratic lifeblood of empire. The gentle murmur of 1,000 conversations rises and falls like waves on a distant shore, almost soporific in its rhythm. This soothing cadence masks vigilance dulling dangers. Feel that slight tug at your belt? That's a pickpocket testing whether you're an easy mark. The Forum attracts Rome's most skilled thieves, who work in organized groups to separate visitors from their valuables. Some create diversions while others execute the theft, disappearing into the crowd before victims realize what's happened. City guards rarely intervene. They're either paid to look away or focused on more serious crimes. More dangerous than simple theft are the political undercurrents that can erupt into violence without warning. See that cluster of men in simple togas listening to an animated speaker. They're clients of a powerful senator, and they look agitated. Political rivalries in Rome aren't settled merely through debate. Physical intimidation and outright violence are common tools. Street gangs affiliated with different political factions regularly clash, catching innocent bystanders in their wake. The most lethal threat in the Forum, however, is the crowd itself. When rumors spread or tempers flare, the orderly space can transform instantly into a crushing mass of humanity. With few exits and no crowd control, people are trampled or suffocated in these sudden surges. Just last year, during a grain distribution that turned chaotic, 27 people died when panic spread through the queue. Their bodies were found later, some still clutching the tokens that would have entitled them to their ration. As you navigate this elegant danger zone, staying to the periphery is wisest. The massive stone paving slabs, worn smooth by centuries of sandaled feet, gleam with an almost hypnotic beauty in the strengthening sunlight. The Forum represents the pinnacle of Roman civilization, yet even here, death lurks behind marble facades and beneath gilded roofs. The 9th hour approaches, and with it comes a dramatic change in Rome's street life. Until now, wagon traffic has been banned from the city centre, a measure implemented by Julius Caesar to reduce congestion during daylight hours. But as this restriction lifts, you hear the distant rumble of wooden wheels on stone growing steadily louder. The first carts appear at the Forum's edge, heavily laden with goods for afternoon markets. Their wooden wheels, bound with iron rims, thunder against the paving stones with bone-jarring force. These vehicles have no springs or suspension. Every bump and divot in the road translates directly to the cargo and driver. More concerning for pedestrians is their complete lack of brakes. Once a fully loaded wagon begins moving downhill, its momentum becomes unstoppable until it reaches level ground. Step carefully now onto the street itself, and notice what your sandals encounter. The surface is treacherously uneven, with deep ruts carved by years of cartwheels following the same paths. Between these grooves lies a slurry of mud, animal manure, and human waste that forms a slippery, foul-smelling hazard. Public slaves make desultory efforts to clear major thoroughfares, but most streets remain uncleaned for weeks. The stench rises as the day warms, a complex bouquet of rotting vegetables, urine, animal dung, and the indefinable miasma of urban decay. Romans have grown so accustomed to this smell that they barely notice it, but your modern nose recoils at the assault. What you're breathing isn't just unpleasant, it's dangerous. Bacteria thrive in this fetid environment, becoming airborne with each passing cart that splashes through puddles of questionable origin. Watch that intersection ahead. An ox-drawn wagon attempts to navigate the tight corner, while a faster donkey cart approaches from the opposite direction. The drivers exchange curses in rapid Latin, each refusing to yield. Such standoffs frequently end in collisions, with pedestrians caught between immovable wooden wheels and unyielding stone walls. Roman traffic fatalities number in the hundreds each year, with the narrow streets around the Forum claiming the most victims. Even the sidewalks, such as they are, offer limited protection. These raised pathways along building fronts accommodate barely 2 people walking abreast, forcing many pedestrians into the street itself. The wealthy solve this problem by having slaves clear their path, shouting for commoners to make way. You have no such luxury, forced to dodge and weave through the increasingly dense traffic. A sharp cry causes you to leap back just as a runaway cart hurtles past, missing you by inches. Its driver, a young man with panic in his eyes, futilely pulls on the reins of his terrified horse. Further down the street, you hear the sickening crunch of wood splintering against stone, followed by human screams. Another statistic for Rome's daily toll of traffic accidents, invisible in historical records but painfully real to those involved. The morning advances toward midday, and a pressing physical need reminds you of another Roman hazard, one so mundane yet so dangerous that it claims countless lives each year. You need to find a public latrine, and fortunately, Rome has many. Unfortunately, they represent one of the city's most effective disease vectors. Follow that small crowd of toga-clad men turning into a colonnaded building. Inside, you discover a surprisingly social space. The public latrine features a long marble bench with keyhole-shaped openings arranged in a row, without dividers or privacy screens. Romans consider toilet functions a communal activity, a time for conversation, business deals, and political gossip. Take your place on the cold marble surface, noticing how the design allows waste to drop directly into a channel of continuously flowing water beneath. This sophisticated sewage system, the famous Cloaca Maxima, represents one of Rome's greatest public works. Yet for all its engineering brilliance, it does nothing to prevent the spread of parasites and bacteria among latrine users. That sponge on a stick, resting in a bucket of vinegar water, that's the Roman equivalent of toilet paper, shared among all patrons. The vinegar is meant to clean the sponge between uses, but its disinfecting properties fall woefully short of modern standards. Each person who uses this communal cleaning tool potentially transfers intestinal parasites to the next user. Roundworms, hookworms, whipworms, and tapeworms spread efficiently through this system, along with bacteria causing dysentery and typhoid. Listen to the casual conversation around you. 2 merchants discuss grain prices, while a slave waits patiently nearby, holding his master's toga properly draped. A young man complains of stomach pains and frequent diarrhea, symptoms of the intestinal parasites he'll battle his entire life without ever receiving effective treatment. Romans accept these chronic digestive ailments as normal, unaware that their sophisticated sewage system ironically facilitates the very diseases it should prevent. As you finish your business, you politely decline the communal sponge, earning puzzled looks from your fellow latrine users. This small act of self-preservation might save you from immediate infection, but the damage may already be done. The breakfast you consumed earlier, the water you drank, even the air you've breathed, all potential carriers of microbes foreign to your immune system. The sun climbs higher in the sky and you notice your face feels slightly feverish. Is it merely the increasing heat of the day, or the first sign of one of Rome's many endemic illnesses taking hold? Either way, you could use some grooming after your morning adventures. Ahead stands a tonssur's shop, a barber surgeon where Romans go for haircuts, shaves and basic medical treatments. The tonsur's establishment buzzes with activity even at this hour. Inside, several men wait their turn on wooden benches, while others sit in simple chairs, their faces covered in lather. The rhythmic sound of razors being stropped against leather fills the air, a hypnotic swish-swish that almost masks the more worrying sounds of pain coming from behind a thin curtain at the back. You take a seat, observing the barber at work. His hands move with practiced precision as he scrapes a dangerously sharp blade across a client's throat. Unlike modern razors, these implements are rarely sterilized between customers. At most, they're wiped with a cloth that itself harbors colonies of bacteria. Each nick or cut, and there are many, creates an entry point for infections, ranging from minor skin irritations to potentially fatal blood poisoning. The curtain parts, and a pale-faced man emerges supported by a concerned friend. His arm bears a fresh bandage, already showing spots of red. Bloodletting, a standard treatment for nearly every ailment in Roman medicine, has just relieved him of vital fluid his body can ill afford to lose. The Romans believed that illness results from an imbalance of the four humours: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile; fever, bloodletting; cough, bloodletting; fatigue, more bloodletting. When your turn comes, the barber gestures you to his chair, a simple wooden seat with minimal padding. His tools lie arranged on a small table: bronze razors, bone combs, tiny scissors, cupping glasses for bloodletting, and primitive surgical instruments whose purpose you'd rather not contemplate. None have been properly cleaned. All have served dozens of customers before you, transmitting bacteria, fungi, and even blood-borne diseases from person to person. Just a trim, you manage to communicate through gestures, declining the offered shave, and definitely avoiding any medical procedures. Even this minimal service carries risks. The barber's fingers moving deftly through your hair, transfer oils, dead skin cells, and microscopic parasites from previous clients. Head lice and skin fungi spread efficiently in these conditions, along with more serious infections through any small cuts on your scalp. As the barber works, he shares the latest gossip, a social function as important as his tonsorial skills. From him, you learn of a senator's sudden death, likely poisoning, he implies with a knowing look, a grain ship that arrived yesterday, prices should drop temporarily, and rumours of unrest among the Praetorian Guard, best to avoid the Castra Praetoria area. This intelligence network of barbers serves as Rome's informal news service, spreading information and misinformation with equal efficiency. The midday sun now beats down on Rome's 7 hills, and the city pulses with the frenetic energy of commerce and politics. But for many citizens, this marks the time for one of Rome's most cherished rituals, a visit to the public baths. Following the crowd streaming toward an imposing brick structure adorned with marble facades, you enter the world of the Thermae, where pleasure and peril mingle in steamy proximity. The echoing atrium welcomes you with the soothing sounds of splashing fountains and the gentle murmur of conversation. Attendants collect a nominal entry fee. Bathing in Rome is remarkably affordable, subsidized by wealthy patrons and emperors who understand its value in maintaining social harmony. Rich and poor alike strip down to naked equality here, though subtle status markers remain in the quality of the slaves attending them and the oil flasks they bring. Your journey begins in the tepidarium, a pleasantly warm room where your body can adjust gradually to the heat that awaits. The temperature here feels perfect, neither too hot nor too cool, maintained by an ingenious system of hypercausts circulating heated air beneath the floor. Marble benches line the walls, smooth from countless bodies that have reclined here over decades. The gentle, radiant warmth seeps into your muscles, easing tensions you didn't realize you were carrying. Men lounge in various states of undress, engaged in conversation that ranges from business negotiations to philosophical debates. In one corner, a group plays dice, the small ivory cubes clicking rhythmically against a wooden board. The stakes appear low, but the competition generates animated commentary from onlookers. This social aspect of Roman bathing, the forming and cementing of relationships, explains why citizens visit daily even when not particularly in need of cleansing. But beneath this civilized veneer lurks invisible danger. The warm, humid environment creates perfect conditions for fungi and bacteria to thrive. That marble bench where you sit, countless skin infections have transferred from previous bathers to its porous surface. The athlete's foot, ringworm, and more serious skin diseases spread efficiently in these communal spaces. Roman physicians documented these ailments but never understood their transmission mechanisms. Moving deeper into the bathing complex, you enter the caldarium, a steam-filled chamber of intense heat that opens your pores and induces profuse sweating. The moisture-laden air fills your lungs, simultaneously soothing and slightly suffocating. Romans believe this sweating purges impurities from the body, and in some ways they're right, though their understanding of physiology remains primitive by modern standards. After sufficient time in the heat, an attendant approaches with a curved metal tool called a strigil. With practiced strokes, he scrapes the accumulated sweat, dirt, and oil from your skin, a cleansing method that predates soap in Roman culture. The oils used before this scraping, often perfumed for the wealthy, plain for commoners, serve as both cleanser and moisturizer. But watch closely as the attendant moves to the next bather, giving the strigil only a cursory wipe before continuing his work. Skin cells, bacteria, and fungi transfer efficiently from body to body through these shared implements. The grand finale of your bathing experience comes in the frigidarium, a cool plunge pool where bathers immerse themselves after the heat. The shock of cold water causes gasps and laughter among first-timers. Regular patrons know to enter gradually, allowing their heated bodies to adjust. The pool itself, beautiful with its mosaic floors and statuary, harbors an invisible threat more dangerous than anything you've encountered yet. Deep in the water circulation system that feeds these pools, colonies of Legionella bacteria thrive in the lukewarm sections of piping. When aerosolized in water droplets, these bacteria cause a severe form of pneumonia that Romans have no means to diagnose or treat. Modern archaeologists testing ancient bath systems have found evidence of these deadly microbes in similar structures throughout the former empire. Each breath of mist rising from the water's surface potentially carries infection deep into your lungs. As you emerge from the frigidarium, feeling refreshed despite the hidden dangers, the bathhouse experience concludes with a gentle massage. Skilled slaves apply scented oils to your skin, working out knots in muscles and preparing you for the afternoon ahead. This sensory pleasure, the culmination of the bathing ritual, ensures Romans return daily despite the considerable time investment. For a civilization without television or internet, the baths serve as entertainment, networking venue, and wellness center combined. Outside once more in the harsh midday sun, Rome seems temporarily quieter. Many shops have closed for the traditional midday break, and patricians have retreated to their villas for the siesta that helps them avoid the day's most punishing heat. But this respite applies only to the privileged. For Rome's vast slave population, nearly 1/3 of the city's inhabitants, there is no break from labor. Watch that work crew repairing paving stones nearby. Their overseer dozes in the shade while the slaves continue under the merciless sun, their backs bent, skin blistering from exposure. Dehydration claims countless slave lives during summer months, with masters considering them easily replaceable assets rather than humans deserving of basic care. Some wear iron collars inscribed with their master's name and address, not for identification, but to facilitate their return if they attempt escape. The cruelty of Roman slavery exceeds even the harshest historical examples from your own time. A master can kill his slave with impunity, torture them for entertainment, or work them literally to death without legal consequence. Sexual exploitation of slaves, regardless of gender, is commonplace and considered a master's right. Children born to slave women automatically inherit their mother's status, creating a self-perpetuating underclass with virtually no hope of advancement. Yet paradoxically, Roman slavery also offers an unusual feature, absent in later slave systems, the possibility of manumission. Many slaves save for years, slowly accumulating the funds to purchase their freedom. Others receive liberty as a reward for exceptional service or as a status symbol for their masters. Wealthy Romans often free slaves in their wills, gaining posthumous reputation for generosity. These freed persons, liberty, form a distinct social class, neither slave nor freeborn, with limited rights but significant economic opportunities. As you pass a blacksmith's workshop, the contrast becomes stark. While free Romans enjoy their afternoon rest, slaves continue to work the bellows, hammering metal in suffocating heat. Their life expectancy, particularly for those in industrial or mining work, may be as little as 7 years from the time of their enslavement. The rhythmic clanging of hammer on anvil, which might seem quaint to modern ears, represents the relentless exploitation that powers Rome's economy and leisure class. The afternoon advances, and Rome gradually reawakens from its brief siesta. Shops reopen their wooden shutters, and the streets once again fill with the bustle of commerce. Your stomach reminds you that several hours have passed since your simple breakfast at the Popina. The ideal place to find an afternoon meal would be one of Rome's famous food markets, where vendors sell everything from simple street food to exotic imported delicacies. Following the increasing foot traffic leads you to the Macellum, one of Rome's largest food markets. The initial impression overwhelms the senses, a kaleidoscope of colors, sounds, and aromas that blend into a uniquely Roman tapestry. Stalls overflow with produces arranged in careful displays, pyramids of apples and pears, bunches of herbs hanging from rafters, and baskets of olives glistening with brine. The gentle hum of commerce, haggling, greetings, and the clink of coins creates an almost musical backdrop. The spice vendor's stall draws you in with its intoxicating fragrances. Saffron from Spain, pepper from India, silphium from Cyrenaica, each represented in small clay containers carefully guarded by the merchant. These precious commodities cost more than their weight in silver, having travelled thousands of miles along Rome's extensive trade networks. What you don't see are the various additives mixed with these expensive spices: chalk powder with white pepper, brick dust with red saffron, and various local plants substituted for rare imports. Nearby, a fish seller arranges his wares on a marble slab kept cool with regularly replaced ice carried down from mountain regions. The fish look fresh, their eyes still clear, scales iridescent in the afternoon light. What remains invisible is the garum factory, where fish sauce, Rome's ubiquitous condiment, is produced. There, fish entrails ferment in open vats under the sun, creating a pungent sauce that Romans add to virtually every dish. The production process attracts vermin, contaminates local water, and often involves dangerous preservatives including lead salts that make the sauce sweeter while slowly poisoning its consumers. The grain merchant stall appears less exciting but represents Rome's nutritional foundation. Great sacks of wheat, barley, and millet, the staples that feed the empire, await measurement and sale. Yet, these unassuming grains harbor one of Rome's most insidious killers, fungal contamination. Improperly stored grain develops aflatoxins, potent carcinogens produced by mold, that cause liver damage and cancer over time. Without understanding the cause, Romans accept chronic liver ailments as an inevitable part of aging, rather than a preventable foodborne hazard. A street food vendor calls out, advertising hot sausages fresh from the grill. The savory aroma proves irresistible, and you exchange a few coins for a portion wrapped in a grape leaf. The first bite delivers a complex flavor profile: garlic, pepper, and herbs complementing the rich meat. Yet the sausage contains more than these intended ingredients. Meat preservation in Rome relies heavily on salt and spices to mask the taste of incipient spoilage. Without refrigeration, butchers frequently sell meat well past its prime, especially to street vendors who can disguise questionable quality with strong seasonings. As you finish your potentially hazardous snack, the angle of the sun indicates mid-afternoon, prime time for Rome's most famous entertainment venue. The Colosseum rises in the near distance, its massive travertine arches drawing crowds like moths to flame. Today features a special gladiatorial contest sponsored by a senator seeking popular favor, and the streets leading to the amphitheater overflow with excited spectators. You join the stream of humanity, curious to witness this iconic spectacle of ancient Rome. The queue outside the Colosseum moves with surprising efficiency, a testament to Roman crowd management. Each person presents a tessera, a clay or wooden token that serves as their ticket, marked with section, row, and seat number. This sophisticated numbering system ensures the amphitheater's 0 spectators find their designated places with minimal confusion. The wealthy enter through special gates, bypassing the common crowds entirely, social stratification reflected even in architecture. As you enter through the appropriate archway, following the crowd up ramps and staircases, you notice attendants distributing cups of watered wine, free refreshment, courtesy of today's sponsor. This seemingly generous gesture serves a calculated purpose. Slightly intoxicated crowds remain docile and easily entertained. The wine, predictably, contains lead, from the pipes that carried the water, the containers that stored it, and sometimes additives deliberately included for sweetening. Your allocated space sits high in the cavea, the tiered seating section for common citizens. Those of higher status occupy the lower rings closer to the action, with senators and vestals in special reserved sections at ground level. The wooden benches offer no comfort, and people pack tightly together, creating ideal conditions for the spread of lice, fleas, and communicable diseases. Every cough, sneeze, and exhaled breath around you potentially carries pathogens your modern immune system has never encountered. More concerning than biological hazards are the structural ones. This particular section of seating was repaired recently after a partial collapse during the last major games. Such incidents occur with alarming frequency, despite the Colosseum's impressive engineering. Overcrowding, poor maintenance, and cost-cutting in materials contribute to catastrophic failures that can claim dozens of lives in an instant. You shift your weight cautiously, noting how the wooden supports creak ominously beneath the combined mass of spectators. The crowd's roar swells as the opening procession enters the arena, gladiators marching in formation, displaying the weapons they'll soon use against each other or the exotic animals already pacing in cages below the hypogeum. The pageantry temporarily distracts from the uncomfortable conditions and potential dangers surrounding you. Romans live for these spectacles, the controlled violence that channels social tensions into sanctioned outlets. What the cheering masses fail to recognize is their own vulnerability in this densely packed space. When panic strikes, whether from structural failure, fire, or civil unrest, these same efficient entrance tunnels become death traps. Stampedes at public games throughout Roman history have claimed more lives than the gladiatorial contests themselves, with victims trampled or suffocated in narrow vomitoria as crowds surge toward exits. The afternoon wears on, the sand of the arena gradually darkening with blood from various contests. The heat, noise, and emotional intensity create a disorienting effect, enhancing your sense of temporal displacement. Are you really here, in ancient Rome, witnessing these brutal entertainments, or has some fever taken hold, producing elaborate hallucinations? The boundaries between reality and nightmare blur in this iconic yet terrifying Roman experience. As the gladiatorial games conclude, and the sun begins its descent toward the Janiculum Hill, you extricate yourself from the packed amphitheater. The late afternoon light bathes Rome's buildings in a golden glow that transforms even the most dilapidated structures into something momentarily majestic. This magical hour, What photographers of your era would call the golden hour casts long shadows across the forum as you make your way toward the Subura district. The Subura represents Rome's most densely populated neighborhood, a warren of narrow streets, towering insulae, and bustling commerce that continues well into evening hours. As daylight fades, a new hazard emerges: the countless oil lamps and cooking fires that illuminate Roman nights and create the city's most persistent threat: fire. Watch that food vendor lighting his terracotta lamp, dipping a wick into olive oil and touching it with a glowing ember. The flame catches, casting flickering light that barely extends a few feet into the gathering darkness. Similar lamps ignite by the hundreds across the Subura, each a potential source of catastrophe. With no electricity or gas lighting, Romans accept these open flames as necessary despite their obvious dangers. Inside the crowded tenements, families cook evening meals on small braziers filled with glowing charcoal. The more affluent use proper hearths, but many poor Romans have only portable cooking stands placed dangerously close to wooden furnishings, bedding, or the wooden structural elements of the buildings themselves. A single moment of inattention, a knocked-over lamp, a wayward spark, a cooking fire left untended, can transform an entire insula into an inferno within minutes. The narrow streets between buildings serve as both fire lanes and fire accelerants. Too narrow for effective firefighting equipment, they nonetheless provide perfect channels for flames to leap from one structure to another. The wooden upper stories of insulae, built as cheaply as possible by profit-minded landlords, catch fire with frightening ease. Their wooden balconies and connecting bridges become aerial pathways for advancing flames. Rome's history bears the scars of devastating fires. The Great Fire under Nero destroyed 3 of 14 districts completely and damaged 7 others severely. Despite popular misconceptions, most Roman fires start accidentally from cooking, manufacturing processes, or religious practices involving open flames. The city averages several significant fires weekly, with major conflagrations occurring multiple times annually. The Roman response to this constant threat comes in the form of the Vigiles, a corps of 0 men organized into 7 cohorts who serve as Rome's firefighters and night watchmen. You spot a patrol of these municipal guardians making their way through the Subura, carrying basic equipment, buckets, axes, and large blankets for smothering smaller fires. Their presence offers limited reassurance. Against a well-established blaze, they can do little but create fire breaks by demolishing buildings in the flame's path. As darkness deepens, the streetscape transforms. Shopkeepers close their wooden shutters and secure them with iron bars. Those wealthy enough to venture out after dark are preceded by torch-bearing slaves who light their way, moving beacons that announce their importance while providing minimal security. The Subura's daytime bustle gives way to a more furtive energy as Rome's nocturnal population emerges. The night holds more immediate dangers than fire. Roman streets after dark become the domain of criminals who find cover in the near-total darkness between pools of lamplight. Street gangs, often organized around political factions or neighborhood affiliation, claim specific territories and extract protection payments from local businesses. The faint clink of weapons and murmured conspiracies from shadowy doorways suggest violence brewing beneath the relative calm. Look there, the quick exchange between hooded figures in that recessed doorway. Drug trade is active in imperial Rome, with opium from the east and cannabis from Africa finding ready markets among all social classes. Alcohol flows freely in popinae that remain open through the night, contributing to the frequent brawls that leave bodies discovered at dawn. Sex workers, slave and free, occupy specific streets designated by the aediles who regulate Rome's oldest profession, with taxation rather than prohibition. More dangerous than common criminals are the organized gangs employed by politicians and wealthy patrons. These designation operae intimidate opponents, disrupt rival political meetings, and occasionally carry out assassinations disguised as robbery gone wrong. During election seasons, these gangs wage virtual street warfare, making nighttime travel particularly hazardous for anyone who might be identified with the wrong faction. The Vigiles patrol primarily, to prevent fires, not crime. Their secondary law enforcement role focuses on apprehending runaway slaves, identifiable by their shaved heads or brand marks, rather than protecting ordinary citizens. The distant shout and subsequent commotion indicates another fugitive captured, soon to face punishment ranging from brutal flogging to crucifixion, depending on their master's temperament. Rome after dark operates under different legal standards than daylight hours. The 12 Tables, Rome's ancient legal code, specifically stipulates that killing a nocturnal thief is justified regardless of circumstances. This creates a dangerous legal environment where violence after sunset rarely leads to consequences for the perpetrator. Combined with the absence of effective lighting and law enforcement, these conditions make night travel in Rome potentially fatal. The respectable citizens you encountered in the forum and markets earlier are conspicuously absent now. Romans with any claim to status remain indoors after dark unless absolutely necessary, emerging only for specific night festivals or religious obligations. Their homes become fortresses, doors barred, slaves positioned as guards, and dogs released in courtyards to alert against intruders. The street becomes the exclusive domain of those with no alternative, the desperate, the criminal, and the enslaved. As you navigate the increasingly dangerous nighttime landscape, every shadow conceals potential threats. That whispered conversation behind you, possibly followers marking you as an isolated target. The approaching footsteps that suddenly divert down an alley, perhaps someone recognizing the patrol of vigiles turning onto your street, the consistent creak of wooden shutters opening slightly as you pass. Residents monitoring the night's developments from relative safety. Midnight approaches, bringing with it the accumulated hazards of a full day in ancient Rome. You've inhaled toxic smoke, consumed contaminated food and water, risked structural collapses, navigated dangerous traffic, exposed yourself to countless pathogens, and now face the very real possibility of violence in the darkened streets. Your body, stressed by these multiple assaults, begins sending unmistakable distress signals. That slight dizziness you felt earlier has intensified. Your stomach churns uncomfortably, perhaps from the market sausage, possibly from waterborne parasites, or maybe the early stages of lead poisoning. The scratchy feeling in your throat could indicate the beginning of a respiratory infection from the morning's smoky air. The headache building behind your eyes might stem from any number of toxins you've encountered. Your modern immune system, unprepared for ancient Rome's microbial landscape, struggles against invisible invaders multiplying in your bloodstream. No, I still need to complete the final section. Hour 24, fever dreams, fateful odds, 0-0, and provide the soft landing conclusion. Let me continue. The midnight hour finds you seeking refuge in a quiet corner near the Tiber, away from the dangers of the Subura. The river flows dark and silent, its gentle sounds providing momentary comfort against the distant shouts and occasional clangs of metal from the city behind you. The moon reflects on the water's surface, creating an almost peaceful scene that belies the countless hazards you've navigated in a single day. A feverish chill runs through your body now, unmistakable evidence that something within Rome's invisible arsenal of pathogens has found purchase in your system. Was it the morning's respiratory assault from particulate-laden air, the waterborne bacteria in your breakfast wine, the parasites lurking in the food market's offerings, the fungal spores in the bathhouse steam, or perhaps a more virulent infection transmitted by one of the countless humans you've brushed against in crowded streets and public buildings? The statistical odds of survival for a time traveler in ancient Rome make for sobering reflection. Historical demographers estimate that nearly half of all children born in the empire died before reaching age 10. Those who survived childhood faced an average life expectancy of roughly 35 years, though this figure masks significant variation based on social status, occupation, and urban versus rural living. For city dwellers in particular, infectious disease claimed more lives than any other cause, followed by accidents, violence, and the slower death of chronic poisoning. Your modern body, while benefiting from a lifetime of better nutrition, lacks the acquired immunity that Romans developed through continuous exposure to their environmental hazards. Without antibiotics, even minor infections can progress to life-threatening conditions within days. The medical care available, bloodletting, herbal concoctions of questionable efficacy, and prayers to healing deities would likely worsen rather than improve your condition. Temple bells sound in the distance, marking the changing of the night watch. Their bronze tones echo across the city, momentarily rising above the backdrop of urban sounds that never fully cease, even at this late hour. Bakeries are already preparing tomorrow's bread, their ovens stoked by sleepy slaves working through the night. The first produce wagons from outlying farms begin their journey toward dawn markets. Rome never truly sleeps. It merely shifts into different rhythms of activity. Your eyelids grow heavy as fatigue compounds the effects of whatever illness has taken hold. The stone bench beneath you, cold and unyielding, nonetheless offers a moment of rest. As consciousness begins to fade, the boundaries between reality and dreaming blur. Are those approaching footsteps real or imagined? Is the distant glow across the river a peaceful villa lamp, or the beginning of another urban fire? The answers slip away as fever dreams take hold. In this twilight state between wakefulness and sleep, the true nature of ancient Rome reveals itself not as the marble-clad ideal of historical imagination, but as a precarious daily struggle against countless forms of death. The grandeur of empire, its monuments, institutions, and artistic achievements, exists alongside grinding poverty, casual cruelty, and omnipresent physical danger. For all its remarkable advancements, Rome remains a place where survival beyond a single day requires extraordinary luck. The statistical probability that you, a visitor from another time, lacking acquired immunity and cultural knowledge, would survive a full 24 hours in this environment remains vanishingly small. Each breath drawn, each step taken, each morsel consumed represented a roll of loaded dice, with the odds increasingly stacked against you as the day progressed. That you've made it to this midnight hour defies the actuarial tables of ancient survival. As consciousness slips further away, the sounds of Rome gradually fade into the background. The gentle lapping of river water against stone embankments creates a rhythmic lullaby. The distant calls of night watchmen blend with the occasional barking of street dogs into a soporific urban symphony. Even the dangers, ever present but momentarily held at bay, seem to recede as exhaustion claims its due. Perhaps you'll awaken tomorrow, having somehow survived your first day in ancient Rome. Perhaps skilled physicians will find you, recognizing your foreign garb and unusual appearance, and apply their limited but occasionally effective remedies to whatever ailments now course through your system. Perhaps the gods of this ancient world, in whom you've never believed but who may nonetheless exist in this reality you've entered, will extend special protection to a traveler so far from home. Or perhaps this midnight fever marks the beginning of the end, a statistical likelihood rather than a pessimistic assessment. The human body, remarkably resilient yet ultimately fragile, can withstand only so many simultaneous assaults before vital systems begin to fail. Without modern medicine to intervene, the progression from infection to serious illness to death often occurs with merciless efficiency. As the river continues its eternal journey toward the sea, your breathing slows and deepens. The pain that accompanied each inhalation earlier now gives way to a curious numbness. The Tiber's surface ripples with moonlight, creating patterns that seem to contain messages just beyond comprehension. Temple bells sound once more, their resonance lingering in the cool night air. Rome continues its nocturnal existence around you, neither caring nor even noticing the fate of one more fragile life among its million souls. The ancient world recedes now, its dangers and wonders alike fading into darkness. The last sensation you register is the gentle touch of mist rising from the river, cool droplets against fevered skin. And then, mercifully, nothing but the sound of water against stone, continuous and unchanging, flowing onward as it has since long before Rome existed and will continue long after its eventual fall. The eternal city claims another traveler, returned to time's endless current. The villa rises from the landscape, not as an intrusion upon the gentle hills of Tivoli, but as if the earth itself had dreamed it into being over centuries of patient slumber. Hadrian's retreat, sprawling across its verdant plateau, beckons with the whispered promise of secrets kept for 2 millennia. As twilight approaches, the marble seems to inhale the golden light, storing warmth within its ancient bones that will radiate softly through the coming night. Here, far from Rome's ceaseless clamour, an emperor once sought the peace that eluded him across 3 continents. Our journey begins where countless sandaled feet once tread, upon the entrance hall's exquisite floor mosaics. The opus sectile technique employed here represents the pinnacle of Roman craftsmanship, where stone speaks silent volumes through colour and arrangement. Each piece, limestone, marble, porphyry, serpentine, was hand-cut with painstaking precision before being fitted together like a puzzle whose solution yields perfect harmony. The artisans who created these masterpieces worked not just with their hands, but with an understanding of eternity, knowing their creations would outlast their own brief lives. The pebble mosaics whisper different stories than their more refined counterparts. Gathered from riverbeds across the empire, these humble stones travelled thousands of miles to rest beneath imperial feet. Their roundness speaks of patient waters, of time's gentle persistence. Some arrived from the banks of the Nile, others from Hispania's rushing streams, each carrying microscopic memories of distant lands Hadrian himself had visited during his restless travels. The emperor who could not find peace in motion sought to bring the world to his doorstep instead. Notice how the patterns shift subtly as we move deeper into the villa. Near the entrance, geometric precision dominates, squares, triangles, and circular medallions arranged with mathematical perfection. The language of order, of imperial control, speaks clearly here. But as we venture further, these rigid forms gradually yield to flowing designs that mimic water currents, wind-blown grasses, and unfurling vines. This transition was no accident, but a deliberate progression from public formality to private relaxation, from the emperor's official face to his contemplative heart. The symbolic riverstones beneath our feet form tributaries that guide visitors through the villa's complex layout. Follow this meandering line of blue-grey pebbles from Hispania's northern coast, and you'll find yourself drawn toward private bathing chambers. The ochre pathway assembled from Cappadocian stone leads to dining areas, while the white marble chips from Luna gently direct honoured guests toward sleeping quarters. No signs needed, no instructions given. The floors themselves provide silent wayfinding for those who understand their subtle language. These pebbles, pressed into mortar centuries ago, have withstood countless footsteps without complaint. Imagine the figures who once passed this way, not just Hadrian himself, but his reluctant empress Sabina, his advisors bearing news both welcome and troubling, slaves carrying platters of exotic delicacies, and perhaps most poignantly, young Antinous, whose beauty would be immortalized in stone after the Nile claimed his mortal form. Each contributed their weight to the slow compression of these stones into their beds, leaving invisible traces of their passing. The acoustic properties of these varied surfaces were no afterthought. Different materials produce subtly different sounds underfoot. The gentle click of harder stones announced approaching visitors, while softer materials cushioned footfalls near sleeping quarters. Even in darkness, a familiar resident could navigate by sound alone, listening to the changing voice of the floor. In this way, the villa itself became an instrument played by its inhabitants, producing a continuous, ever-changing composition of presence and movement. As we move beyond the entrance halls, the villa unfolds before us like a dreamer's meandering thoughts. No rigid grid constrains its layout, no perfect symmetry imposes artificial order. Instead, buildings cluster and separate according to function and view, following the gentle contours of the land. This organic approach reflects Hadrian's philosophical nature, his understanding that true harmony comes not from forcing nature into submission, but from finding one's place within its existing rhythms. The path opens now to reveal what many consider the villa's crowning jewel, the Canopus Canal. This long, rectangular pool stretches before us, its still surface creating a perfect mirror for the sky above. Named after the Egyptian city near Alexandria, this artificial waterway served as both a nostalgic tribute to Hadrian's travels and an engineering marvel designed to cool the surrounding gardens during summer's oppressive heat. 8 centuries before the great fountains of Versailles, Romans had already mastered water as both aesthetic element and climate control. The play of light upon the canal's surface changes with each passing hour, each shifting cloud. Morning brings diamond sparkles dancing across ripples stirred by gentle fountain streams. Midday transforms the water into a shield of brilliant silver, almost too bright to look upon directly. But now, as evening approaches, the canal becomes something else entirely, a pool of liquid amber, then deepening purple, reflecting the surrounding colonnades as wavering, dreamlike versions of themselves. The emperor, who filled his villa with hundreds of statues, understood that no carved marble could match water's endless capacity for transformation. Listen, though not with your ears but with some deeper faculty of imagination, to the gentle acoustics of this space. The soft bubbling of water from marble spouts, the almost imperceptible lap of tiny waves against the canal's edge, the cooling moisture that changes how sound itself travels through the air. The architects who designed this space understood that moving water creates not just visual beauty but an auditory landscape that soothes something primal within us. Long before modern science could explain why, Romans recognized water's power to lower heart rates and calm troubled minds. The curved colonnade embracing the canal's far-end cradles a collection of statues that blend Greek aesthetic ideals with Egyptian mythological figures. This cultural fusion wasn't merely decorative but reflected Hadrian's cosmopolitan worldviewist belief that Rome's strength came from absorbing rather than erasing the diverse traditions of its conquered territories. The caryatids, their graceful forms eternally supporting their architectural burden, were expressions of serene acceptance rather than strain. Their placid faces embody the Stoic philosophy that Hadrian himself aspired to follow, bearing life's weight with dignified equanimity. When moonlight bathes this space, the water becomes a liquid mirror of such perfection that the boundary between reality and reflection blurs into irrelevance. Hadrian would often dine here on summer evenings, reclining on couches positioned to capture both the direct view and its watery double. Guests described the almost supernatural quality of these gathering show voices seemed to float across the water, how lamplight multiplied into constellations of earthbound stars, how the emperor himself appeared simultaneously present and elsewhere, his thoughts clearly wandering beyond the pleasant conversation to some distant horizon. The canal reveals its subtle engineering as we observe more closely. Its depth changes imperceptibly along its length, creating different acoustic properties and reflective qualities. Near the dining pavilion, the shallower water produces brighter, more cheerful sounds to accompany meals. In the deeper central portion, sounds become more resonant, enhancing music performed during evening entertainments. This careful calibration of sensory experience demonstrates how Roman luxury went beyond mere opulence to create environments precisely tuned to human perception and pleasure. As we leave the hypnotic waters of the Canopus behind, our path leads to spaces haunted by absence, the private gardens and reading rooms where Hadrian mourned his greatest personal loss. Here, in these quieter corners of the vast complex, stands a temple unlike the others, not dedicated to Jupiter or Neptune or even the deified emperors who preceded him, but to a young Bithynian man whose drowning in the Nile in 130 CE fragmented Hadrian's heart into pieces no imperial power could reassemble. Antinous, emperor's companion, beloved, and obsession gazes from every niche and pedestal in this secluded sanctuary. His youthful face, captured in marble with an almost painful perfection, shows neither smile nor frown but the timeless serenity Roman sculptors reserved for gods. In death, Hadrian elevated his favorite to divine status, establishing a cult that spread throughout the empire with surprising rapidity. Was this merely imperial grief seeking immortality for its object, or something more calculated, a political act cloaked in personal devotion? The whispers of these walls offer contradictory answers. The melancholic rituals performed in this space followed patterns both Greek and Egyptian, reflecting Antinous' birthplace and his place of death. Incense burners still bear traces of resins imported from Arabia and East Africa, their smoky fragrance once rising to heavens that remained stubbornly silent. Small channels carved into the flooring once carried symbolic Nile water, actually drawn from local springs but consecrated through elaborate ceremony past offerings of flowers, honey, and wine. These private observances revealed a different Hadrian than the philosophical emperor presented to Romea, man consumed by a grief that his stoic ideals could neither contain nor resolve. Hadrian's poetry, fragments of which survive in contemporary accounts, found its fullest expression in this shrine. Against the stoic custom of his time, he wrote openly of his loss, comparing Antinous to Adonis and Hyacinthus, beautiful youths loved by gods and taken too soon. Some verses were inscribed directly onto the walls in gold leaf, now long vanished but recorded by visitors who recognized their literary merit separate from their emotional content. In these lines, imperial power confronts its ultimate limitation, its inability to reclaim what time and fate have taken. The statuary in this intimate space achieves a level of naturalism rarely seen even in Rome's finest works. Observers have noted how the marble itself seems to breathe, how the rendered curls appear soft enough to stir in a passing breeze. This artistic transcendence came at incalculable cost to the craftsmen. Many ruined their eyesight achieving such details, working by lamplight through endless nights to satisfy an emperor whose grief demanded nothing less than perfection. Their names are lost to history, while Antinous' beautiful face remains recognizable around the world after 2 millennia. Moving deeper into the villa's labyrinthine design, we discover spaces rarely seen in historical illustrations or academic reconstructions. Below the sumptuous main floors, accessed by narrow stairways and discreet corridors, lies the hidden machinery of luxury, the service areas where hundreds of slaves maintained the illusion of effortless abundance that surrounded the emperor and his guests. These utilitarian passages connect kitchens, storerooms, and servant quarters in an efficient network designed to keep necessary labor invisible to noble eyes. The contrast between these spaces and those above could not be more striking. Here, no marble adorns the walls, no mosaics decorate the floors. Practical material, simple terracotta tiles, unadorned plaster, and functional wood create environments designed for work rather than contemplation. Ceilings hang lower, doorways narrow, and windows shrink to minimal openings that provide ventilation without wasting valuable heat. Even the proportions shift, with spaces sized for efficiency rather than the golden ratios that govern the public areas above. Yet these humble corridors contain their own quiet beauty, the honest elegance of pure functionality. Notice how precisely the kitchen's architecture channels smoke away from food preparation areas, how cleverly the storage rooms employ temperature gradients to preserve different goods. The engineers who designed these systems understood physics centuries before science had formal names for these principles. Their ingenuity operated not in service of aesthetics but of practical problems: how to serve 300 guests simultaneously, how to maintain ice in summer, how to create the illusion that divine hands, not human labor, provided imperial comforts. The culinary operations particularly impress with their industrial scale. These enormous hearths, with their specialized niches for different cooking temperatures, could produce banquets of staggering variety. Remains of hydraulic lifts reveal how prepared dishes were elevated directly to dining rooms above, appearing as if by magic before astonished guests. Food archaeologists studying residue from these spaces have identified ingredients from 3 continent spices from India, fruits from Africa, garum fish sauce from Hispaniola converging in kitchens whose aromas would have created a sensory atlas of the known world. The aromas that once permeated these service corridors linger only in imagination now. Cardamom and pepper, carried by camel caravans across desert routes. Mediterranean herbs harvested at precise phases of the moon to maximize essential oils. Fermented fish sauces aged in clay amphorae for exactly 3 years. Slave cooks, many captured specifically for their culinary talents from conquered territories, worked in precisely choreographed teams under the watchful eyes of stewards, who answered directly to the emperor. A single mistake in timing or seasoning could result in punishment or reassignment to far less desirable duties within the vast imperial household. The silent workforce that moved through these passageways developed their own subtle languager, combination of discreet hand signals, barely perceptible nods, and strategic coughs that conveyed complex messages without disturbing the rarefied atmosphere above. Children born into slavery within the villa often specialized in what we might call acoustic camouflage, the art of moving, serving, and clearing with such practiced grace that their presence registered below the threshold of conscious awareness. Their footsteps, their breathing, even the rustle of their simple garments were calibrated to maintain the illusion that comfort manifested through divine right rather than human effort. Archaeological evidence reveals unexpected details about these invisible lives. Tiny shrines tucked into niches near service entrances show where slaves made modest offerings to their personal deities, often syncretized versions of official Roman gods blended with religious traditions from their homelands. Small personal possessions, a carved wooden comb, a simple glass bead necklace, a terracotta figurine of a nursing mother speak to the persistence of individual identity even within a system designed to erase it. These humble artifacts remind us that every pair of hands that maintained the emperor's paradise belonged to someone with hopes, memories, and an interior life as complex as Hadrian's own. Water management within these service areas demonstrates particular ingenuity. The same aqueducts that fed decorative fountains above also supplied the practical needs below, with the flow carefully regulated to ensure that essential functions received priority during drought periods. Grey water from bathing facilities was filtered through successive stone chambers and reused for laundry operations, then directed to garden irrigation. This hierarchy of water usage reflects a sophisticated understanding of resource conservation that challenges modern assumptions about ancient wastefulness. As we ascend again to the main level, emerging from the utilitarian underworld, we experience something of the psychological shift that visitors to Hadrian must have felt the transition from the pragmatic world of effort to the philosophical realm of aesthetic contemplation. This sensory recalibration was intentionally engineered through architectural cues, ceilings that suddenly soar higher, corridors that widen to frame specific views, surfaces that transition from rough functionality to sensuous polish. Even the air itself seems to change character, carrying different scents and acoustic properties that signal passage into spaces where different rules apply. The fading light draws us now toward the western gardens, where evening unfolds its own particular magic upon the villa's most contemplative spaces. Unlike the formal gardens favored by later European traditions, Roman horticulture embraced a more naturalistic approach that sought to elevate rather than dominate natural forms. Here, plants were arranged to create emotional journeys rather than geometrical statement pathways that led visitors through carefully orchestrated transitions from stimulation to reflection, from social engagement to private thought. As darkness gathers, night-blooming flowers begin their subtle performance. Pale moonflowers unfurl their trumpet-shaped petals, releasing a vanilla-tinged fragrance that carries surprising distances on the evening air. Night-scented stock, imported at great expense from distant shores, contributes peppery notes that seem to sharpen mental clarity even as they soothe emotional turbulence. These nocturnal gardens served practical purposes beyond their beauty. Roman physicians prescribed evening walks among certain plant combinations as treatments for insomnia, melancholy, and the peculiar anxiety that afflicted those who carried imperial responsibilities. The astronomy pavilion rises before us on a slight elevation that offers unimpeded views of the horizon in all directions. This elegant rotunda, open to the heavens through a perfect circular oculus, contains sophisticated instruments for tracking celestial movements. More than scientific curiosity motivated these observations. Hadrian, like many educated Romans of his era, maintained a complex relationship with astrological belief, intellectually skeptical yet emotionally receptive to the possibility that cosmic patterns might illuminate human affairs. Here, imperial astronomers monitored the night sky for omens relevant to state decisions, while the emperor himself sought personal guidance from the eternal clockwork of the planets. The pavilion's marble floor contains an intricate map of the known heavens, with semi-precious stones marking significant stars and constellations. When rainwater or evening dew collected on this polished surface, it created a mirror that doubled the sky above, surrounding observers with celestial bodies both real and reflected. Hadrian often received visitors here during his final years, when illness increasingly confined him to the villa. Contemporary accounts describe his aged hand-tracing constellations on the floor while discussing imperial succession, as if seeking continuity between earthly politics and cosmic patterns that would outlast individual lives. Hadrian's final contemplations in these gardens reflected the paradox of his regnant emperor, who sought peace through military strength, who preserved cultures even as he conquered them, who built enduring monuments while understanding their ultimate impermanence. As physical frailty overtook him, he spent increasing hours in this western precinct, watching shadows lengthen across the grounds he had created through imperial will, yet could not take with him beyond death. His ruminations during these sunset vigils were recorded by attending physicians, revealing a mind turning increasingly toward philosophical questions that his remarkable life soldier, ruler, builder, traveler had raised but never fully answered. The terraced overlook where we now stand offered Hadrian his preferred perspective on his creation. From this vantage point, the villa reveals itself not as disconnected buildings, but as a coherent statement architectural philosophy rendered in 3 dimensions. The seemingly random arrangement of structures displays its hidden logic when viewed from above, with sightlines connecting significant points, water features providing orientation, and the progression from public to private spaces following the sun's daily journey. The emperor who traveled restlessly throughout his vast domains created here a microcosm that required no further wandering. As night fully embraces the gardens, imagine Hadrian in his final days, wrapped against the evening chill, contemplating this view. The man who built a wall across Britain to define the empire's northern boundary understood better than most the impermanence of human divisions. The ruler who established a syncretic cult blending elements from multiple religious traditions recognized the arbitrary nature of spiritual boundaries. The restless traveler who circled the Mediterranean world searching for something unnamed found, perhaps, in these quiet gardens, the acceptance that all journeys eventually conclude where they began with the self, and the universal questions no imperial power can resolve. The lamps are being lit now throughout the villa grounds, small flames held in elegant bronze sconces that cast gentle pools of light rather than banishing darkness completely. This interplay between illumination and shadow was fundamental to Roman aesthetics, which understood that beauty requires mystery to sustain interest. The pathways between buildings become rivers of soft gold, while unlit spaces between them preserve the purpling shadows that allow night birds and nocturnal fragrances to flourish. The emperor who collected worldly wonders recognized that some experiences like these gardens at dusk resist collection, existing only as fleeting moments between defined states. The evening deepens around us as we complete our circuit of Hadrian's sanctuary. The marble that gleamed blindingly at noon now glows with a gentle inner luminescence, as if returning the day's absorbed sunlight in measured breaths. Fountains that danced vigorously in daylight hours now murmur in more reflective tones. The cosmos wheels slowly above the astronomy pavilion, where an emperor once contemplated his individual insignificance against celestial permanence. Time itself seems to move differently here as darkness settles, not marching forward with Roman military precision, but pooling in courtyards, gathering in colonnades, inviting not action but contemplation. Let your awareness expand softly into this deepening night, feeling how the villa's spaces transform as sensory emphasis shifts from visual dominance to the more intimate realms of sound, scent, and tactile awareness. The smooth marble balustrade beneath your fingertips still carries residual warmth from the departed sun. Cypress trees, barely distinguished now as darker shades within darkness, release their resinous fragrance more intensely as cooling air pulls essential oils from their needles. Distance becomes measurable by the layered whispers of different water features, each with its distinctive voice: the steady crystalline pour of courtyard fountains, the rhythmic spillway of the canal, the nearly subliminal droplets gathering and falling from stone aqueducts. Hadrian's villa whispers still, for those patient enough to listen, of an emperor's outward magnificence and inward searching, of power vast enough to reshape landscapes, yet insufficient to answer the human heart's persistent questions. As sleep approaches on silent feet, like the most perfectly trained of imperial servants, let these ancient stones sing their lullaby of impermanence and beauty, of ambition and reflection, of the eternal dialogue between what we create and what creates us. The stars still hang like scattered pearls across the indigo sky when our courier rises from his sleeping mat. The night watchman has marked the water clock. 2 portions remain before dawn, but preparation waits for no heavenly schedule in the emperor's postal service. Relay stations, or yizhan, form the invisible threads that bind together the vast tapestry of Han China, nearly 4,000 li of imperial roadways connecting distant provinces to the beating heart of Chang'an. The courier stretches, his movements deliberate and practiced, developed through countless mornings identical to this one. The stable master has already selected today's mount, a dappled grey gelding with a white blaze running down its nose like a brushstroke of celestial calligraphy. The courier runs his hands along the horse's flanks, checking for signs of soreness or injury with fingertips that can detect problems no eye would notice. This intimate examination follows patterns established during Emperor Wu's reign, when the first standardized courier service began connecting the expanding empire. Even as dynasties rose and fell like the breath of sleeping giants, these small rituals remained unchanged. Horse and human joined in service to something larger than either. Each courier carries a thin bamboo scroll containing his route authorization, stamped with vermilion seals that glow like ember light when unfurled. The document bears the weight of imperial authority, transforming an ordinary man into an extension of the Son of Heaven himself. Any who would delay or hinder his passage face punishments measured in precisely calibrated strokes of the bamboo rod. But more powerful than fear of punishment is the quiet pride evident in the courier's methodical preparations, the knowledge that dynasties endure through such unremarkable daily devotions. The bamboo dispatch tubes, lacquered against rain and sealed with wax, contain messages whose contents remain unknown to their bearer. Some carry taxation records from distant commanderies, others hold reports of border disturbances or astronomical observations. The most important may contain confidential communications between court officials, their silk scrolls treated with alum and wrapped in oiled paper against humidity. The courier arranges these precious cylinders in his saddlebags according to protocols established generations before his birth, creating perfect balance across the horse's back. Nearby, the station master checks the courier's wooden tally sticks against his own records. These simple accounting tools, notched sticks split lengthwise with each half bearing matching marks, verify the courier's identity and authority to requisition fresh horses at the next relay station. The system's elegant simplicity has survived for centuries precisely because it requires no specialized knowledge beyond basic counting. Even in the empire's most remote corners, where classical education remains sparse, these humble wooden implements maintain the administrative skeleton upon which imperial flesh depends. As the first grey light spills across the eastern horizon, the courier mounts with practiced ease. The station master offers a simple bowl of rice congee with pickled vegetables, identical to the meal being served at hundreds of similar stations throughout the realm. This standardization represents not mere convenience, but philosophical harmony, each relay station a microcosm of imperial order, where proper relationships between people, objects, and actions reflect the cosmic balance advocated by court Confucians. The courier eats methodically, wasting neither food nor motion, before returning the bowl with a slight bow that acknowledges this small but essential contribution to the realm's stability. The gates open as the first rooster announces dawn with drowsy enthusiasm. The courier nudges his mount forward, establishing the steady pace that will carry imperial communications approximately 50 li before day's end. Neither rushing nor dawdling, he embodies the middle way in physical form, conserving the horse's energy while fulfilling his mandated duties with appropriate diligence. The road stretches before him, its packed earth surface meticulously maintained by local officials, whose performance evaluations depend partly on the condition of imperial infrastructure within their jurisdiction. As the morning mist gradually surrenders to strengthening sunlight, the road winds through landscapes transformed by human ingenuity. The courier passes through fields where mulberry trees grow in precise rows, their tender spring leaves shimmering like waves on a jade-green ocean. These carefully tended groves form the foundation of the empire's most precious commodity, silk, whose secrets remain zealously guarded against barbarian knowledge. Local tradition holds that the Empress Lezu herself discovered sericulture by accident when a cocoon fell into her tea, unraveling its lustrous thread as she lifted it from the hot liquid. Whether divine inspiration or gradual innovation, these humble trees now sustain thousands of families and fill imperial coffers through taxes on their precious harvest. Between the orderly mulberry groves, simple farmhouses cluster like shy children, seeking protection in numbers. Outside each dwelling, women and children tend to shallow bamboo baskets where silkworms consume their daily feast of freshly picked leaves. Their methodical movements, gathering, sorting, and distributing foliage, maintaining precise temperature and humidity, listening for the distinctive rustle that indicates healthy consumption, represent knowledge transmitted through generations of mothers to daughters. This domestic production, repeated in countless households across the empire, generates wealth that funds both imperial expansion and cultural refinement. The courier rides past a village where even the smallest children participate in the silk-making process. Some gather mulberry leaves in woven baskets, while others help their grandmothers monitor the silkworm's progress through 5 molting stages. The most trusted assist with the delicate work of harvesting cocoons at precisely the right moment, after the silkworm has completed its protective shell, but before the emerging moth can damage the continuous thread. This perfect timing, like so many aspects of imperial administration, requires both intuitive knowledge and strict adherence to established patterns. The result transforms humble insect secretions into material so valuable it serves as currency in certain transactions, paying for both tax obligations and luxury goods from distant lands. As the sun climbs toward its zenith, the geometric shadows of mulberry trees gradually shrink beneath their canopies. The courier consults the position of the celestial lamp, comparing its angle against his internal schedule. His disciplined pace has covered sufficient distance to warrant the customary midday halt. Ahead stands a weighhouse, smaller than a full relay station but offering essential services to those traveling on imperial business. Its modest wooden structure, distinguished by the official vermilion-painted gateposts, promises both physical refreshment and administrative assistance for the next stage of his journey. The weighhouse keeper, recognizing the approach of an imperial courier by his distinctive blue-trimmed garments, prepares the appropriate reception. Neither elaborate enough to waste precious time nor so sparse as to dishonor the emperor's service, this welcome follows regulations recorded in bamboo ledgers, stored in every such establishment. The courier dismounts with a fluid economy of movement, leading his horse to the watering trough, while attendants verify his tallies and prepare the simple meal prescribed for midday refreshment. Inside the cool shade of the weighhouse, the air carries the distinctive fragrance of salted tea, that humble yet essential beverage that sustains travelers across the empire. Unlike the delicate preparations favored by scholars and court officials, this practical variant combines tea leaves with salt, sometimes dried ginger, and occasionally pressed into cakes for efficient transport. The weighhouse keeper adds hot water to a clay pot containing this mixture, releasing an aroma that speaks of earth and journey rather than refinement and leisure. The resulting brew, poured into simple cups without ceremony, delivers both hydration and stimulation for the afternoon's travels. Accompanying the tea are millet cakes, the sturdy, reliable sustenance of imperial couriers since the earliest postal routes were established. These dense squares, sometimes containing dried fruits or nuts when local harvests permit, provide concentrated energy without requiring elaborate preparation or extended consumption. The courier eats methodically, his attention divided between bodily nourishment and the sparse decorations adorning the way house walls. Simple wooden tablets display selected Confucian maxims in careful calligraphy, reminders of the philosophical framework supporting every administrative action from tax collection to military campaigns. When the way prevails in the empire, the common people do not discuss politics, reads one such tablet, its characters rendered in the clerical script favored for official communications. Another advises, he who exercises government by means of his virtue may be compared to the North Polar Star, which keeps its place and all the stars turn towards it. These principles, memorized by every aspiring official during years of rigorous examination preparation, transform way houses into subtle extensions of imperial ideology. Even in remote provinces, these wisdom-bearing walls maintain philosophical conformity across vast geographic distances. The courier presents his dispatches for the way housekeeper to stamp with the appropriate seal, a small yet significant ceremony that documents his progress along the mandated route. The vermilion paste, carefully prepared from cinnabar and sesame oil, according to regulations dating to the former Han, transfers the station's unique identifier onto the courier's route document. This humble stamp, pressed with precise pressure against the bamboo scroll, connects this isolated way house to the vast administrative machine extending from the emperor's inner court to the empire's furthest reaches. The small satisfaction evident in the keeper's methodical application reveals the quiet dignity found in even minor contributions to the realm's orderly function. While his horse rests in the shade of ancient pines, drinking from troughs filled with water drawn from the station's well, the courier exchanges polite observations with the keeper. Their conversation follows comfortable patterns, weather conditions affecting local roads, minor bandit activity reported in nearby mountains, the health of mulberry groves supporting regional tax revenues. This informal intelligence gathering supplements official communications, creating a secondary information network that often reaches the capital through couriers' verbal reports long before formal documents arrive through regular administrative channels. Refreshed by tea and rest, the courier prepares for the afternoon journey. The way housekeeper provides fresh water for his bamboo traveling flask and verifies his route documentation with a final stamp. As the horse's saddle is checked and repositioned to prevent chafing on the afternoon ride, both men observe the silent choreography that has sustained imperial communications for generations. No words acknowledge the essential partnership between these anonymous men, yet their coordinated movements reflect the deep interdependence that maintains the Son of Heaven's mandate across thousands of li of challenging terrain. The afternoon sun casts lengthening shadows as the courier resumes his journey, the steady rhythm of hoofbeats marking time like a water clock's measured drops. The road now descends gradually toward a river valley, where one of the Empire's many waterways interrupts the carefully maintained postal road. Though seemingly a natural obstacle, these rivers function as liquid highways within the imperial transportation system, carrying bulk goods and official communications along routes determined by geography rather than administrative decree. The courier's path intersects with this parallel network at a ferry crossing, where terrestrial and aquatic bureaucracies meet in harmonious cooperation. The approaching sound of flowing water grows gradually more distinct, though never rising to disruptive volumes. Unlike the roaring mountain streams or thundering waterfalls that feature in court painters' dramatic landscapes, this managed waterway moves with deliberate, almost administrative calm. Its banks, reinforced with carefully positioned stones and occasional wooden retaining walls, demonstrate the Han understanding that nature functions best when guided by human wisdom rather than conquered through brute force. The water itself, neither perfectly clear nor troublingly turbid, carries silt that will eventually nourish downstream fields in an endless cycle of resource distribution that imperial engineers have studied for generations. As the courier reaches the riverbank, the ferry system reveals itself, an ingenious arrangement that transforms flowing water from obstacle to asset. Unlike simple pole-pushed rafts used by commoners at smaller crossings, this official post road features a chain ferry of substantial capacity and elegant engineering. A massive iron chain spans the river's width, anchored to stone foundations on both banks and suspended just below the water's surface to allow boat traffic to pass unimpeded. The ferry itself, a sturdy wooden platform with raised sides to contain horses and cargo, connects to this submerged chain through an ingenious mechanism that allows operators to use the river's own current as propulsive force. The ferry operator, recognizing an imperial courier by his distinctive attire and documentation, signals immediate preparation for crossing. Other travelers, merchants with laden donkeys, a minor official returning to his district office, farmers bringing produce to market, respectfully make space for the emperor's business to proceed without delay. This deference reflects not merely fear of punishment for impeding official communications, but acknowledgement of the fundamental order that prioritizes imperial administration above private concerns. The courier accepts this precedence not with arrogance, but with the simple recognition that his mission transcends individual importance. No, I still need to complete the final section, lantern-lit ledger signing, and the soft landing conclusion. Let me continue. As the chain ferry glides across the river's surface, the courier observes the precise engineering that makes such crossings reliable in all but the most extreme weather conditions. The subtle calculations involved, understanding water flow rates, determining optimal chain tension, establishing counterbalance weights, represent generations of hydraulic knowledge accumulated through careful observation and systematic record-keeping. While foreign visitors marvel at more visible achievements like the Great Wall or imperial palaces, perhaps the true genius of Han civilization lies in these unassuming solutions to practical problems, innovations that transform daily challenges into opportunities for efficient administration. The water's surface captures and transforms the late afternoon light, breaking solid beams into countless shimmering fragments that dance across the ferry's weathered planks. This momentary beauty, unrecorded in official reports yet present in every crossing, offers brief respite from the journey's purposeful focus. The courier permits himself to notice this ephemeral display, not as distraction from duty but as reminder of the natural harmony that proper governance seeks to maintain. The classical texts, studied by every aspiring official, teach that when human systems align with heaven's principles, such moments of unexpected grace naturally appear, confirming the righteousness of the imperial way. Reaching the opposite bank, the courier remounts and continues along roads that gradually transition from fertile river valley to more sparsely populated highlands. The shadows lengthen into purple brushstrokes across the landscape as the day's final hours approach. Calculating remaining distance against available light, he maintains the steady pace that will deliver him to the next relay station by nightfall, neither rushing to exhaustion nor delaying beyond regulatory expectations. This measured progress embodies the middle path advocated by court philosophers, avoiding both excessive haste and undue procrastination in service to the emperor. The first stars appear overhead, just as lantern light becomes visible from the next Yijan. The relay station's walls emerge from gathering darkness, their rectangular precision imposing human geometry upon natural landscape. Torches flanking the main gate guide the courier's approach, their steady flames protected from evening breezes by cleverly designed bamboo screens. The station's evening activities have already begun. Stable hands preparing feed for tomorrow's mounts, kitchen staff tending to cooking fires, administrative personnel updating ledgers with the day's transactions. This choreographed routine continues regardless of which individuals occupy specific roles, maintaining operational consistency across imperial transitions and geographical differences. The station master greets the arriving courier with formal correctness rather than personal warmth. Their relationship exists within administrative parameters rather than social connections. After verifying route documentation and examining dispatch tubes for intact seals, he directs the courier to the appropriate area for evening procedures. The horse is delivered to waiting stable hands, who will assess its condition, provide appropriate care, and record its performance for breeding records maintained throughout the imperial postal system. The courier, meanwhile, proceeds to the station's administrative chamber, where the day's final and perhaps most important ritual awaits. The lantern-lit ledger room contains the documentary heart of the relay system. Here, bamboo and wooden records track every movement of personnel, animals, and communications throughout the Empire's vast postal network. The station scribe, whose calligraphy must meet exacting standards established by central authorities, prepares the evening entry documenting the courier's arrival. Each character he forms, with brush and ink, represents not merely a record, but a devotional act, maintaining administrative continuity across thousands of LI and hundreds of years. The courier presents his wooden tags for inspection and verification. These humble identification tokens, notched with specific patterns, indicating route assignment and authorization level, receive careful examination before being matched with counterparts stored at the station. Their perfect alignment, notch corresponding precisely to notch when placed together, completes a verification system requiring neither literacy nor complex technology, yet effectively preventing unauthorized access to Imperial communication networks. The station master's approving nod acknowledges not just the courier's identity, but his place within the vast human mechanism that extends the Emperor's will across distant territories. As ink dries on bamboo records that will eventually be compiled, copied, and archived in provincial and imperial libraries, the courier exchanges brief observations with station personnel. These quiet conversations carry no official designation, yet serve essential functions within the postal system. Reports of road conditions, weather patterns, local disturbances, or unusual travelers flow through these informal exchanges, creating a parallel intelligence network supplementing official communications. Experienced station masters distill these casual remarks into valuable insights that may eventually reach provincial governors or even imperial ministers through similar conversations at higher administrative levels. The official transactions complete, the courier receives his modest evening meal, simple fare designed to nourish without excess, identical to that served at every station throughout the Empire. This culinary standardization represents not merely logistical convenience, but philosophical principle, the belief that administrative harmony requires consistency in all aspects, including the bodily maintenance of those who serve the imperial system. The courier eats with the quiet satisfaction of one who has fulfilled his assigned duties precisely as regulations require, neither exceeding his authority nor falling short of his responsibilities. In the simple sleeping quarters, where traveling officials and couriers rest on identical sleeping platforms regardless of their rank within the administrative hierarchy, the day's journey gradually releases its hold. Tomorrow will bring another segment of the eternal relay that maintains the Empire's coherence. Another courier will carry these same dispatches further along prescribed routes, while this man returns with different communications bound for the direction from which he came. Individual identities blur within this continuous process of imperial connection, yet each participant retains the quiet pride of contributing to something far more enduring than any single human life. As night deepens across the land, countless similar scenes unfold at relay stations scattered throughout the Empire. Each lantern illuminates the same careful procedures, each brush records similar arrivals and departures, each wooden tag confirms another anonymous yet essential participation in administrative continuity. These humble activities, repeated without audience or acclaim, form the true foundation of imperial power, more enduring than military conquests, more essential than court intrigues, more consequential than any individual emperor's reign. In the gentle rhythm of these routine transactions, dynasty after dynasty has found its most reliable expression of heaven's mandate. The courier's breathing gradually slows, his mind releasing the day's vigilance as sleep approaches. The bamboo dispatch tubes rest securely in the station's document room, their contents still unknown to the man who carried them through changing landscapes. Tomorrow, they will continue their journey through other hands, advancing steadily toward destinations determined by distant authorities. The relay continues unbroken. messages flowing like water through channels carved by administrative tradition, carrying the empire's lifeblood through pathways invisible on any map, yet more essential than the grandest highways marked with imperial milestones.